Hmm? Ah!
You're listening to the Run for Your Lives podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome to the show. I'm Daphne.
And I'm Pake.
And this is the Run for Your Lives podcast.
Yeah. And if you heard a little bit of voice, yes, this episode we are talking about the psychological horror film Get Out, which is written and directed by Jordan Peele and released February 24th, 2017. And so we reached out to a good friend of ours to have him guest and help out and talk about this movie. Please welcome Renaldy. First time to Run for Your Lives.
Yes. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
So excited to have you with us to talk about this one.
Yeah, this is gonna be a fun one. I'm excited. We love Jordan Peele here on Run for Your Lives. Absolutely. We've covered Us and Nope in the past and had a blast with them. And so we were like, yeah, we've got to catch up and finish up and cover all the Jordan Peele stuff. So Get Out is left. And then as we started talking about it, we were like, all of Jordan Peele's movies, like I'm just gonna be very, upfront and open about this. It's like they all have some kind of like racial awareness kind of thing to them, but Get Out as his first, definitely, like, there's a lot of like very important stuff in there that it really deals with a lot of like, at least what I understand from my perspective, just to be like a lot of just like the black experience in America. And I was like, man, as much as we want to cover this movie, nobody wants to listen to two white people talk about the racial experiences, talked about in Get Out for an hour and a half. Let's get somebody from that perspective. And it's like, we reach out.
It's gotta be.
Who'd be willing to that? And then, you were very interested and excited to talk about this. And you've got some really cool insights and stuff as well that I'm really looking forward to hearing. So it's like, definitely to have your voice as part of this is very important. And also just, I'm excited to have you here because you're awesome.
Thanks, guys. I mean, I love this movie and I love the work that Jordan Peele has done. And it's really cool that you guys have me on. Mm-hmm. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, we never shy away from movies that have some sort of social commentary. It's kind of one of the things that draws us to a movie is if there's a message within it that can be amplified or we can talk about, we're always interested in being able to discuss it. And having you here with us is really going to make the conversation more robust. And I'm very excited that you're here. We're going to start this podcast the way that we always do, which is doing a few production notes. This movie was filmed in Fairhope and Mobile, Alabama. It's the directional. This is the directional debut. This is the directorial debut for
Wait. Yes.
It's the directorial debut for comedian Jordan Peele. This movie was nominated for 4 Oscars, including Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, and Original Screenplay, which it won for Original Screenplay. The budget was $4.5 million. It grossed $255.4 million.
Just a slight profit, just a little bit.
Little bit. It was 104 minutes long. Pake, bring us a synopsis.
All right, here's the just like very bland, basic IMDb vague one that you can't really cover too much with that. But yeah, a young African-American visits his white girlfriend's parents for the weekend, where his simmering uneasiness about their reception of him eventually reaches a boiling point. That's one way to put it.
Yes.
Oh.
A boiling point.
What? Wait.
Right.
Understatement.
Yes.
Right.
Understatement if there ever was one.
Right.
Yeah. When I watched this movie this time, I just had so many questions. Like, as I was going through it, thinking, at what point do you try to turn around and go home? At what point do you not go in the first place?
Yeah. Chris had a lot of, he was able to kind of ignore or roll with a lot of bullshit for a while. He's like, you know what? I love her. It's okay. Like, this is what you do for people.
It's kind of it's kind of a play on the title, like, because in the back of your mind, you're like, I think you should get out, bro. Like, this is getting weird.
Yeah, for sure.
And the movie is called Get Out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think that it takes me to other horror movies where there are points where you're just like, don't go in the basement. Don't you think you should turn around? Why are you doing this? Like, no, this is not a good idea. It's a really bad idea. Get the hell out. But no, people still keep doing stuff like this. I guess that's what makes movies what they are, but you do have to question after a while. It's like, really? You heard a noise in the basement and you're going to go down? You're all by yourself? Are you kidding? No, if I heard a noise in the basement, I'd go get in the car and leave. Yeah.
I liked how the movie did the opposite, because usually in horror movies, like, someone like you, Daphne, would be like, all right, we got to get out of here. But then your friend would be like, no, I don't think it's a big deal. Like, it could just be like a mouse or something. And then you get kind of bullied. Well, maybe not you, but someone of your disposition kind of gets peer pressured.
What are you saying, Renaldy?
So they get peer pressured into going.
Are you saying that I can't be peer pressured? Or do you think?
Well, I don't know. I don't want to assume. I mean, I'm just saying I've had friends that, like, they say that, but then, like, their friend, like, gets them to do something they naturally wouldn't do, like go into the basement.
No,
but like,
you're not getting me
to Get Out.
Yeah, you're not going to get me to go in the basement. Mm-mm. No.
And then Get Out, the friend did the opposite. He was like, I don't think you should go out there and visit your parents.
Like, I don't know how many other ways.
You're not married. It's your girlfriend. It's not your wife. Like,
I know. You know what, though, I have to say, Rod was one of the best parts of this movie for me.
Oh, yeah.
Every time I watch it, I just love it more and more. Mm-hmm. Especially, where the TS fucking A, we get shit done. We solve shit. We resolve it. I don't know. I can't remember the exact quote, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's like, consider this handled.
Yep.
It's handled. Yes.
When I watch this, I can't. I'm teasing a little bit one of my points, but yeah, we'll get to him. But yeah, like Rod is, I quote it along with him because it's just the way Lil Rel is awesome. The way he it's like the TS motherfucking A. It's like, and we get shit handled. He goes, and consider this fucking handled.
Oh my God. Yeah. I just think his character is great. I mean, he didn't give up. He knew something was wrong, and luckily came along at the right time.
All right. Well, we will get into that, but before we do, kind of to break things down a little bit, for those who have listened for a while, like when we have a guest on here, we do venture a little bit from our like character conversation and do more of like a points to where we can really kind of bounce things back and forth between all three of us and talk about the movie. So we have like 3 points, but I already like while watching this, I assumed I was like, if we end up straying from the points a little bit in favor of more free-form conversation with our notes, that's totally fine because I think this movie definitely warrants a deeper and bigger conversation than just bullet points. So whatever makes this better, whatever benefits the conversation over formula, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we adapt. That's what we do. Sometimes a movie will have such an ensemble cast of characters, it's too difficult to break down the characters because there's just so much going on. So we'll deviate a little bit. With this movie, we may deviate. I think Pake's right. Just because there are a lot of things to point out. It's difficult to kind of corral points, I think, with this one.
And even if you try to limit it to like, oh, let's stick to like these points. And I know based off of like the 3 points that I have set aside, I still have so many notes that are things that I really want to say that I think are important. So we'll get to everything.
Yeah.
My second point has like 3 subpoints.
Yeah. It's what happens. I mean, let's be honest.
Oh, yeah.
Let's be honest. There is just a lot to cover. So, as we
this movie felt semi-autobiographical.
Excellent.
Yeah,
well, I look forward to learning
curious.
more about that. Well, as we do when we have a guest on, we let them go first. So, Renaldy, why don't you give us one of your points?
Sure thing. Sound. The way Jordan Peele uses sound just heightens not only the tension, but also like the social commentary that he's trying to get across in the movie. Particularly with like the deer scene, the scene with I forgot the guy's name, but the grandfather running, and then the grandmother just standing behind Chris, like when he goes back to his room and he doesn't notice she's there, and just quiet, and then all of a sudden sound, that back and forth. Just not only it creates that suspense, but it kind of adds to the uneasiness of like being in a white space if you're a Black person that's not used to being in white spaces, because that's clearly, you can kind of tell Chris is not used to hanging around like rural, secluded areas with just white people, and that I like how that kind of flows in with by using sound.
Yeah, that's good. Like that.
Yeah. I definitely have to agree. There were just points, the sound, the music, like it wasn't even like complete music. It was just basically a noise or part of like, it wasn't a soundtrack, but they were just like moments of music that were very brief that just also increased the tension at that time.
Like a couple notes.
Yeah,
right?
a couple of notes, and then you would hear it. Yeah. I felt a lot of tension. The first time I saw this movie, it was in the theater, and the tension the whole time, I just wanted him to leave.
Well, I was even thinking, it just made me think, because I have a note that was like a very small note of being like, oh, I like the song. But it made me think that after you say like sound, because at the beginning, Chris is comfortable, and we're, Redbone, which I'm like, ooh, I like.
Mm-hmm.
But we're getting some Childish Gambino. But it's like there's good, like there's music, and there's like you're feeling that comfort. And then like they're in the car, and there's like, their conversation, the music, and then with the deer, it stops. And then like the whole time they're at the house, there's really no warm music that feels connected. And it's not until, even though it's still like things are still bad, but when Rose is sitting there listening to music in her headphones while on the computer, that's when music is coming back, because he is freeing himself from that and he's moving on. And that's where the music starts coming back in.
Even the sound of her eating, like she's eating the Frosted Flakes and drinking the milk.
Yeah.
I mean, it all sets a tone in this movie.
It puts you into Chris's head.
Yeah.
Like, this is unsettling, because like I think without the sound, it's like on the surface level, it's like, okay, you're trying to get used to meeting your girlfriend's parents, like, and like it separates it from, because like my brother has dated, I've had friends that dated, and they had really uncomfortable first parent meetings. I mean, we have like Meet the Parents starring Ben Stiller. So I think Jordan Peele was like, okay, I don't want people to come away with the impression of, oh, he's just this guy that's really shy trying to meet the parent. Like, no, this is different. Yeah. That's why I like how they use the sound, because it made it clear, like, no, this is not a regular dating relationship where you meet the parents. This is completely different.
You get an ominous tone. You get an ominous tone, right, to me from the beginning. Yeah. Like, knowing the movie, something's going to be off. You don't know what it is, but you get that tone right from the start. And I spent a lot of time just thinking, what is it what's going on? Like, where is, the shoe going to drop? Where are we going to go with this? And Jordan Peele is incredibly clever with details in movies.
Yeah.
Like, he just does such a great job creating metaphors and commentary with the simplest thing.
Yeah, I agree.
Nice. That's really good. I wasn't expecting to start with that, but I like that a lot. All right. So is that all you got on that one, though? Is that it?
Yeah. That was
okay.
it. I mean, I got more, but
as far as
for that point, that's it.
So then me or Daphne can pick up with what's next.
I'll go because my point is about cinematography and the way that things were shot. It kind of goes hand in hand with what Renaldy was saying about the sound. There were just different moments that you get to see throughout this movie that, along with the sound, set the tone for things. Specifically when they're doing the bingo game, how everything is just, there's just this music that's ominous, and he's just making these hand gestures, and people are holding up cards. It's so, at first you don't see what it's all about, and then you see the picture of Chris, and you realize this is like almost like a bidding
Wait
war.
a minute. That's not how you play bingo.
No. Or, I mean, it's like, it is. It's like a raffle or some type of bidding war for Chris. And you know that something is off throughout the movie because some of the people that you meet. But I'll get to that later. I want to specifically just call out a couple of other things. Near the end, when Rose is sitting on the bed, looking on the internet, and she's eating Frosted Flakes, it starts to pan out, and you see that in her bedroom, she's got pictures of all of her victims on the wall. And I just thought that was... It honestly makes me think of the governor in Walking Dead when it pans out and he's got all the heads in the tanks.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's what it made me think of that.
Yeah, it's like she's so just accustomed to, like, it's like ritualistic. You can almost like imagine, because those pictures weren't there obviously when Chris was there at the house. He finds them in the closet. Mm-hmm. But like you can imagine, it's like, oh, I got a new guy, I'm bringing him home, so let me go ahead and take all these down and put them away. We're going to go through the rigmarole of everything. And then when that's all done, we'll put them back up and we begin the process again. Like it's...
Yeah.
There were...
It's her job.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. She treats it like a job.
It's like... She's
an actress.
When you start your workday, some people, they eat Frosted Flakes and scroll through the internet, and then, okay, well, it's time to get to work. It's like a routine.
Gotta look for the next victim. I'm surprised she doesn't have multiple victims at the same time. Like, she's dating 3 or 4 people at the same time. While...
She might have been doing that in the past.
Yeah. They make note of her brother's methods, which I think I didn't notice it at first. I mean, it didn't hit me until I watched it this time. But Andre, it's obvious at this point, Andre was picked up by her brother. Like, Jeremy brought Andre in.
Yeah, you're wondering, like, oh, what happened there at the beginning? Because that's a different thing. Rose wasn't dating Andre. And so, you see him abducted. Which, what a great way to start Jordan Peele's, like, horror career. Is just, like, that opening scene of some, like, just, like, this abduction in the middle of the night in, like, a nice suburban neighborhood. And it's like, oh, there's the tension immediately. But we learn through what Jim Hudson says, his methods or whatever. You're like, oh, so it was Jeremy at the beginning. And then later when Chris takes Jeremy's car and, like, the helmet he was wearing is sitting there in the passenger seat, and you're like, got it.
Uh-huh. Yeah, then it all hits it. It's like, okay. I mean,
I think,
you do have to wonder, though, was Rose dating him and got him to go out there? And that's where Jeremy picked him up? Because I don't know why he was out there.
I don't know.
I thought Rose invited him to a location.
Yeah, I think she did.
Like, hey, there's a party, you should come, and it's at this address.
So they were tag
And then
teaming it.
I think.
Okay.
It's not clear.
Yeah, they don't
but that's my
really
theory.
explain, if she was involved with that or if she was still just focused with Chris at the time or how long they were really together before. I'm not sure, but
Yeah.
yeah, it could be. It's like a family affair for sure.
Unless not Chris, Jeremy paid or bribed the Uber driver to like drop him off at the wrong address. Like maybe he's been spying on a bunch of different black people on Facebook or something. I don't know.
Who knows? This family,
don't put anything past any of them. Yeah.
They're very resourceful. But I thought, yeah, and even the way that they presented Chris's photography, like the way that was shot throughout the beginning of the movie, where we're getting to see different pieces that he has hanging in his apartment. You kind of get a sense for his point of view of who he is and the type of photography that he does. And you get a little bit of insight into his character through the way that was presented. So between Jordan Peele and the cinematographer, I just thought it was really clever. I mean, even just some shots that were far away, like when they first arrive at the house, that isn't shot close up. It's like you get this big picture of the house and the little picture of them arriving and the hugs and the introduction. You feel that to me, it just feels cold. And I think that was the point. Was for it to feel for you to feel disconnected and cold. Because that may be the way that Chris was feeling when he was meeting her parents.
Yeah.
Not close enough.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like you're pushed into something instead of warming up to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's how I felt, just because I was in a situation where a close friend of mine, I didn't realize how wealthy his parents were. So like I had a close friend in college, and this was like his childhood friend. So it was like a friend of a friend. And we would hang out like, on my college campus and, and whatever. But then one time, I think for Halloween, he was like, hey, come to my house. We're going to do like a horror movie marathon. And his house is like an hour away from where we were in college. And, I'm just like, okay, like a regular suburban house. Like, okay, cool. But then it's like this house that's just like in the Get Out movie. Like it's a big house and he's wealthy. And then that it was like a huge, like, whoa, what's going on? And it's in a secluded area in the woods. And we got there at night.
Oh,
so
wow.
it was just like, yeah. Yeah. And I was like, not in the mood to watch horror movies in this location at all. And so it wasn't like my girlfriend or like a girl I was attracted to, but all the other elements were there. And it was just awkward meeting his parents because I'm thinking about all these other things. Like so they're happy to see me, but I'm like disconnected because of all these other circumstances. So like seeing that on the screen, the way Jordan Peele filmed it was like, wow, this is like, you're kind of putting something that's, I think other Black people have felt going into like a white space like that, a very wealthy, secluded space like that, putting it onto the screen.
Yeah, where it's just you take for granted, like people don't realize it's just like it seems like a normal everyday run of the mill thing, but you don't, from other people's perspectives, you're like, small things can be such a like can set off so many little like alarms and red flags in people's brains just because of their own experiences and where they're at in life and like what they we don't even understand. And so yeah, it's just Some people see it and like, what's about that? It's like, I can't even. Do you want to hear the list?
Yeah. So yeah, that was my point. I just really wanted to point out some of the clever ways that they presented different things in the movie and how I think it impacts the way that you're feeling. I guess my final point would be, I think that Jordan Peele doesn't do things accidentally. I think the way he envisions things is to create a way for the audience to understand and feel what the character is going through at the time. And I think that's why some of the things were presented this way. So, and I appreciate it because I love what he's done so far, and I can't wait for whatever's coming out next. It's going to be great.
Yeah, it's that attention to detail.
Yeah.
Like, there's an artistry that I respect, and it inspires me, when I write, to have that same type of mindset when I write a story. It's like the little details.
Yeah, I really love this new era of Jordan Peele, John Krasinski. These unconventional new horror writer-directors who we saw so much in comedy before any of this, and now we're getting to see this other side of them. I just want more because I think that it's a fresh perspective that we haven't had.
Yeah, I think we've talked about this, when we did like Us and stuff, especially with Jordan Peele, but then people don't think about it, but like who better to write stories about understanding human psychology than comedians? Like that's what they do.
Oh,
you know, like that's comedy is at the core taking a deeper understanding of human behavior and psychology and being able to turn that and channel that into humor and jokes and relatable things for people. So whenever you're going to be writing horror, who knows the inner workings of like what makes people think certain ways or can get into people's heads than a comedian. So whenever they're able to channel that,
in a weird way, you can kind of flip a comedic moment into like a horrific moment. Like I think about the movie Fargo. Like there are a couple different scenes in that movie, and I know there's like a TV series with multiple seasons, and it's fantastic. But the movie, I think it was like just horrific things that were played for comedy, and then comedic things that were played for horror.
Yeah,
like when the father-in-law is like, "Hey, where's my daughter?" and it's like, it's supposed to be funny, but it's not really funny because, fill in the blank if you've seen the movie.
Yeah, it's people, I guess, don't realize that like horror and comedy are a lot more closely related than people think. It's all human psychology at the center.
Yeah. So, Pake, what do you have?
All right. Well, you guys coming in with like, let's talk about the sound design and what's really going in deep, and let's talk about the cinematography and the deep thoughts that went into doing this. And I'm like, I like this person, but but my notes, it's just like I'm just gonna shine a little spotlight on the character that I enjoy. We talked about him a little bit, but Lil Rel's Rod. I love Rod so much.
So good.
I said Rod is great. Maybe that's because Lil Rel Howery is so great, but mostly why. But he plays a very important part in this movie because he's like comic relief. He's the funny guy. He's like the best friend who kind of in his own funny way is this voice of reason that like keeps Chris questioning things and always kind of in that back of his head, like, what would Rod say about what's going on right now?
He's the conscience, I think.
But then in the end, he is the hero. He is the hero of this movie. Because, Chris is reaching out to him and talking to him. Chris is weirded out about things going on at the house, so he's calling Rod. You know that there's, like, something more to what Rod is saying. He's not just laughing off. Like, he kind of laughs it off, chuckles it off, and then is finally like, okay, that's enough of that. But the fact that he calls him and sends him the picture of Andre and sends him these things, he's like, there is something here, and he's going to be the one that's going to tell me what's going on. He's going to be straight up about it. it may be ridiculous what he has to say, but there is going to be some kind of glimmer of truth or honesty to it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, even Rod's the one that's just like joking about, like, he mentions the hypnotism and it's like, so all the people are getting hypnotized. And of course he's stuck on this like whole sex slave cult thing, but like, which maybe,
Yeah.
I mean, he's not completely wrong with that. They're,
yeah, he's partially right.
Right. Like maybe not like specifically that, but in a way, I mean, they are taking and using these men's bodies without their consent. So, I mean, that is kind of what's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. That does tie into my second point, but I'll save it.
But it's funny that he mentions that. And it's like, yeah, no, dude's onto something. And he's the one that like looking at that picture and he's like, yeah, that's Andre. I know who that is. And then he goes back and he's doing all the research. He's looking things up and finding out like, well, Andre's been missing for 6 months and people don't know where he is. And that's not who he was. And even where he's going out to the detectives and trying to get help and he's just getting laughed at. And finally he's just like, I'm going to do some hero shit and I'm going to take it up on my own. I'm going to do what I've got to do. I hear the TS motherfucking A.
Yeah.
I'm going to take this like airport security car and I'm going to go out there and I'm going to save my friend. And it's great. Like, I love him just being smart and thinking like to call Rose and then immediately pick up on the psychology stuff of being like, even without getting to see her face, because we seeing her, like the way that she's reacting on the phone, but she's so deadpan in the face is highly unsettling to watch. And like, Rod's not seeing that, but he can pick up on the inflections and things in her voice, and he's smart. To be like, well, I'm going to record her and I'm going to try to catch her slipping up. Unfortunately, she outplays him in that moment, but he sticks to it. And even, where Chris is like ready to accept the blame and just like whatever happens, happens. And he's like, no, I've got you. We're going to get out.
I loved his reaction, Rod's reaction, when he hangs up on Rose and he's like, she's a fucking genius. Like, he was just so like into it at that moment, but he's just in the back of his mind, he's just like, oh my God, Chris has gotten himself into some deep trouble with this.
I like how they use because in like Black culture, there's this, because I've been interested in a lot of white women. I'll put that out there romantically. And every time this happened, I had a Black friend of mine being like, "Hey, just be careful because she might break your heart." It's like, wait, what? Why would she do that? It's like, I'm just saying, you're different. She's not used to a guy like you. What do you mean? And so it's funny how they took that type of, Jordan Peele took that type of conversation and framed it in a way that pushes the story forward.
Yeah. Because
without him, there's no story. Chris would be dead. Well, not dead, but
practically,
metaphorically,
right?
Dead. Yeah. So I thought that was cool. Like, and also it did help the movie. It did help break up the tension a little bit so that they could ratchet it back up again.
Yeah, there seemed to be there were highs and lows, but it all blended really well together. Like, you'd be really worried and pulled into the movie, and then something would happen and you could just relax for a second before it amped up to 100 again.
Yeah. All right. Well, yeah, so I just had to talk about Rod because, man, great. Because again, I do think in characters, even though it's like points, a lot of it, I'm still in like character mode a lot thinking, and it's like, even outside of this movie, it's like, at the end of the season, we got to do like awards for favorite characters and stuff, and like Rod's easily making his way like high on the list right now.
He should be nominated.
Yeah. Well, who doesn't want a best friend like him? I mean, he's a great best friend. He is. He cares about his buddy, and he didn't just let it go, as Pake said, when cops were making fun of him. He still stuck with it to try to get to the bottom of it. So, yeah. Best friend of the year.
I just think it's funny that, like, when I was younger, there was a girl I was interested in, and it looked very similar to Rose. And my friend was like, kind of like, Rod, like, be careful, this and that. And it didn't work out. And don't worry, it's not because she didn't, try to brainwash me to use as a vehicle for her grandfather. But I saw her on Facebook years later, and she was married to another black guy. So it just made me like, wait a minute, what's going on here? Is this my life, or is this a fictional movie? But anyway, and my friend, instead of because I was bummed out that it didn't work out, like we didn't date or anything like that. My friend was just like, "Hey man, at least you're alive, man." And I'm like, "Come on, dude, this isn't a joke." It's like, I'm not joking. I'm really happy you're okay. But anyway.
So Renaldy, what is your next point?
Whew. I'm gonna switch my point. I'm gonna kick my point 2 down the road because the whole sex slave thing, I got sub points. So
okay.
All right, so I'm gonna switch it around. The Get Out scene, just like how that scene jump starts, like that scene, because a lot of great horror movies they have that signature scene, but this one it was very plot twisty. Because the whole time you're like, wait, what is it this family's doing? Like we know they're kidnapping black people, but why? And then when you see that, he got, I guess, inhabited by someone else, and he's himself, and he's saying get out. It's like, oh, that's what they're doing. It like changes everything. And then the second kind of plot twisty kind of scene was him convincing Rose, like, I have to get out. And she's like, okay, I understand. I'm the understanding girlfriend. And then he finds the pictures, and then she's just like, okay, I'm sorry. And he's like, okay, I guess, she's not perfect, but she's understanding. We'll just leave. And then when he asks her for the keys, she's like, no, I don't have the keys. And it's like, what are you and it turns out she was in on it the whole time.
You had that,
she was pretending.
You had that moment. There were moments in this movie, there were several times where, like, when Rod's car pulls up and you don't know, is that a cop car or what is that? You think it's a cop car. This was another indication where you, at that point, do you know, is she in on it or not? Like, I assume she was, but you question it. You question, is she in on it? Is she going to help him? But
see, I didn't question. I was like, she's just an innocent victim in all this. Now, probably is because I thought she was attractive. That's why I thought Rod said she was a genius. I got fooled by the good looks.
She got you too.
That's what happened to me. Yeah.
What about you, Peg? Were you fooled?
Well, I mean, I don't remember. It's been probably since 2017 when I last watched this movie. So like it's been a little bit. So I don't remember what my first, idea of it was. Because I mean, obviously watching it now, I mean, I know what I'm getting into. I know everything that's going on. So from like the second, which then does make things a little more interesting, rewatching it again and seeing what she does. Because one thing I thought was really cool pointing out, is sort of a tangent, but whatever, is the scene where after they hit the deer, and of course, she's talking the officer out of getting his ID. And like the first time, if you watch that in the theaters, you watch that the first time, and you're like, you're kind of with Chris. You're like,
yeah,
oh wow, badass girlfriend moment, standing up for his rights, really being there for him, of like, no, I'm gonna, protect you from like this possible racial bias, this thing. Like, she's standing up for him and being good. No. But then rewatching this, knowing what's going on, you're like, yeah, it seems like this, like her being like this advocate, but no, she has plenty of other personal and selfish reason to make sure that somebody within the law doesn't have his ID and doesn't know that he's out here. Can't put a name to the situation.
Exactly.
Because when he clearly will end up going missing, she doesn't want some police officer having his name and his identity on record.
Yeah. That I didn't think about until this time I watched it. And it hit me while I was watching it. And I'm like, I didn't get that before. But it wasn't that she was trying to protect him. She was trying to protect him so she could get the merchandise to the house because he kind of was merchandise. So she was protecting the family business by trying to get him to the house. But this wasn't about her protecting him because she's a loving girlfriend at all.
Yeah, I think I needed a rewatch. Like when I rewatched it, I'm like, oh, you are a genius.
Yeah.
Rod was right. Yeah. First time I was like, I was suckered into all of it. I was fooled. But the rewatch, I think that's what makes this movie cool. Is like when you rewatch it, you pick up on other details. And that's why I give credit to Jordan Peele for that.
His movies are always you need to go back and revisit them a couple of times to like to see once you kind of get the idea of what's happening, because even with Us and Nope, you've got to see it once to get the spectacle and be like, oh my god, that was crazy, what a twist, and then always go back and rewatch it with that information, and you will see all of the seeds being planted and all the little things that like mean so much when you know what's going on in the background.
Yeah, and there were so many seeds as you're going through this movie. You're like, oh, wow, you know, the road was paved for me to be able to figure this out, but I didn't figure it out.
Yeah, well, even like I think like there's like weird scenes that play off with Walter, the grandfather, like with him sprinting right at him and running around. It's like, that's weird that he goes out there and just runs around at night. But then you think back earlier in the movie, just like out of nowhere, Bradley Whitford's character, Dean, whatever, is sitting there talking about, yeah, my father was an Olympic sprinter. And it's like the clue is right there and you just don't think about it.
Yeah. Or even the fact that the mom knew he was going to go up in the middle of the night to smoke.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because it's clear that Rose probably told her that when he's uncomfortable, he goes out to smoke.
Yeah, they're asking him.
So that's why
they're asking about his parents and stuff, like as if they don't know already, as if Rose hasn't already filled them in on all of this. Like clearly that's why he was chosen, because he doesn't have a family. They're literally picking somebody who's disconnected for the most part. Luckily he had Rod, but he was chosen because
it's easy to be understanding and caring to a person doesn't have that many close ties.
It makes me think of Ready or Not and Grace, who was all alone in the world and ended up getting married into this crazy family where they didn't tell, her husband didn't tell her what was going on until it was too late. So yeah, I kind of had, one of my points was the subtleties that you may not have noticed, because some of the other stuff, like they were wearing hats, like to cover the scars because, they weren't completely healed from the surgery. Like Walter was wearing a hat. You don't notice it until after the hat comes off and you can see the scar right there. And then you also see that, I always forget her name. Georgina was wearing a wig to cover. Like, it wasn't, you just don't think about it when you're watching it. And even Andre was wearing a hat. And it covers the scars.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, those are things like they did. I mean, it keeps the secret until it's time to be revealed.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, what was in your point? Did you have some? Because I know we like tangent off from whatever you were saying at first, and I was like, I've lost the plot.
We like tangents.
I guess to finish off my point, I think I said this a few minutes ago, but just even though the plot twist element is gone, it's still a great rewatch because now you see the other side of the coin. It's almost like the first watch. I mean, if you're gullible like me, you're like Chris, and then the second watch, you're like Rose. Like you see you. It's like the meticulous planning is like it stands out more with the second watch, and that make because some horror movies I've seen like. I mean, I'm kind of a wimp, so I don't. I usually just stick to slashers.
Oh, okay.
And when you watch it, and this movie kind of is kind of in a way a slasher. It's more psychological, but
I find the psychological movies a lot more terrifying than slashers.
Yeah. Yeah, but with slashers, the rewatch value isn't there because it's like you already know who's gonna die the second watch.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the first watch, you're wondering, okay, which one's gonna die and which person's not gonna die. But when so this one it's a little different because it's psychological, so you can kind of see the psychology of the characters and and that kind of makes it enjoyable on a rewatch.
So Daphne, did you have another point? Or did you you already jumped to your point?
Well, I kind of did, but so instead I'll pick one of my notes to talk about. I know that a lot of people raved about Bradley Whitford when he was on The West Wing, but I have to tell you, I think he's done some stuff in the last 10 years that's been pretty amazing. This role in this movie, he just plays these characters with this calm tone. Yeah, they're so devious because you see him here as Dean Armitage and he's the neurosurgeon and we don't really know what his whole story is until we really get into it and he's cutting into the guy's head and everything. But we saw him back in The Cabin in the Woods where he was Steve Hadley, which is one of our favorite characters that we've talked about on the podcast because he just wanted a merman. That's all he wanted.
Oh, that was
him.
That character?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
And then he's also just absolutely incredible in The Handmaid's Tale as Commander Joseph Lawrence.
Yeah, I couldn't help but think, watching this movie is thinking of his character in Handmaid's Tale because it very much is this surface level.
Yes.
Oh, he's a good guy. Wait, no, he's not. But he is empathetic. But actually, he's terrible. But maybe he has a good point. But no, he doesn't. You're very back and forth. Yeah.
Yeah. You don't know if you can trust him. And you can't put your guard down long enough to. It's a similar type of character. He wasn't as, up in your face in this movie, other than the whole thing with the bingo. That really, got to me. Because it seemed like an auction for, you were auctioning off a cow. And that just it freaked me out a little bit. But the way that he delivers, not just with his dialogue, but his mannerisms and his facial expressions, and it all comes together and makes it believable. It doesn't matter what he's doing, any of the characters we've talked about so far. And I forgot he was in this movie, and so when I was watching it earlier, I'm like, oh yes! Because we just love talking about his character, and we love talking about Hadley in The Cabin in the Woods. So I was just excited that we got to talk about another film that he was in. So I wanted to just point that out because I think people know him from The West Wing and they think, well, he did great work. That's his best role, whatever. I just think he's done some great things in the last 10 to 15 years that probably get overlooked. So yeah.
That's cool.
Yep.
No, that's
Bradley
cool.
Whitford always a treat.
Always.
I think it seems like I like how his character just put a face on black discomfort in white spaces. Because I feel like it can be misconstrued as oh, Chris is being rude. He's being disrespectful. They're inviting him to his home and And so like Chris is like kind of on the back foot of like, okay, well, I have to be respectful. I have to be. It's so like it's like a huge like power dynamic that they have over him because of that type of social expectation. And that happens a lot in just real life with Black people. When they go into a space that's mostly white people, it's like they feel like they have to kind of prove something. You know, like they have to prove that they can assimilate. And it's almost like they took advantage of that. That subconscious desire. They took advantage of that to be able to use Chris as property. So it's almost like this is like the psychological version of racism. It's not like in your face like a Ku Klux Klan member with a hood, you know, especially if he's being very polite and very friendly and is like, yeah, I would vote for Obama a third time.
I found him in particular, and also the way that Catherine Keener played his wife. They were really, I think it was unsettling too for Chris, the way that they were. It wasn't just that they seemed accepting, it was like they were over accepting him. Yeah. They were overcompensating. And I think that probably made it worse.
Yeah, it's something I kind of refer to in my notes as covert racism. Which is, what you said, is it's this idea, like they're playing off of, it's almost like these, like, the quote, I call it like that, I have a black friend stereotype. Yeah. Right? Where it's, you know, like the Obama line and stuff. It's like, and unfortunately, and I'm speaking for myself, as white people, we all do it sometimes, even if it's not on purpose or it's not, and you have to you have to catch yourself out. But, you know, it's like he's having these apprehensive things because it is like he changes like his speaking inflection and the things, you know, the whole like my man and, you know, just like, you know, how long is this, you know, how long have you, this thing, like just the way that he's changing the way he's talking. Like there's this weird, like I said, it's like this covert racism where it's like he's doing things differently because there's a black man in the room. And it's like this, I'm not racist. Let me prove to you how not racist I am by now starting to be kind of weirdly racist. It's
it's better to just be yourself, and that will show the person that you are versus trying to be over the top, catering to someone or trying to placate them or patronize them.
Yeah.
In order.
That's a good one. It's because it's equally as problematic. It's like, you still have this discomfort. And so there's this uncomfortable change of behavior towards somebody like a person of color. It's almost like an overcompensation. Mm-hmm. And so there's this, and it is, it's all kind of psychological and subconscious. So I have a note about it. I'll talk about it. I was going to say, I was like, I want to leave a lot of this stuff to Renaldy because again, who wants my opinion? But at least from like the white perspective, or at least a white understanding, here's what I noticed. Is, you know, I was like, of course, the weird culty assimilation of black people being inhabited by white people, using them as a personal fashion statement and form of longevity would come with a kitschy little educational video, right? But it's that scene that really, really hit me. Like I had this like self-inflection moment where I literally like kind of brought myself to tears because I was like, fuck, man. But you're seeing this, it's this moment where Jim Hudson is the one who won this bidding war and got Chris. And, you know, he's this photographer, or he was a photographer. He has this respect for Chris and his work, but he went blind, and now he's looking at this way to live like a whole new lease on life through that. And so it's kind of in a sick way, his respect of Chris is what got him there.
Yeah.
But, and so he's saying like, look, it's, I just want your eyes. It has nothing to do with your race. It's just, but it, under the surface, it does everything to do there because there is still, it is this supremacist mindset of, well, I deserve your life more than you do. I deserve Chris more than Chris does. And what gives him that mindset? What gives him that? And so again, like I said, I didn't want to speak too much on like the black view of things, but I will give an understanding from a white thought process here with what it's kind of put me through. Is unfortunately, there is a big aspect of racism I think that this movie is speaking to that's outside of your normal, like you said, like a Ku Klux Klan kind of racism, where we, and I'll use the term we as like white people. I can talk shit about white people. I am a white people. But then when I say that, it's like we, because unfortunately just ingrained in our society and the way that America has been since its inception, whether we want to face it or not, it's in all of us in some form or fashion. And the more that we just accept that and acknowledge that, that's what's important. But why I'm saying is that, we have this version where we respect, or should we say accept or tolerate other races in our lives, especially black people, since that is what this movie is talking about, where we allow them to occupy like our life in our space, right? You say, oh, I can't be racist because I have black friends, I have black employees, I have black this, that, or the other. But there's this mindset, even if it's like really deep down, that you're like, look at the privilege that I'm affording these people to be in my life. That I treat them the same as my white friends, and look at how I'm going to give them that opportunity. Look how good of a person I am that they're allowed to be in my life. And that's still a gross inequality. It really is. So again, I wanted to kind of avoid my own opinion or preachiness, but it's my understanding. It's the realization that this happens every day, subconsciously ingrained in our being, that, a lot of people want to pretend it's or pretend it doesn't exist and get mad about it when it's brought up, but it is unfortunately very real. And at the core, that is what white privilege is. When people want to bring up the term white privilege, that's what that is at the core, is this idea that even if it's subconscious, you're like, there is this mindset that black people are different in some way, and that for you to accept them and I'm not racist, I love black people in their own way, you're like, they don't need your acceptance to thrive and survive. And so you making that seem like a privilege you're giving them or offering them, that's just as problematic, and we're all failing to do better in that way. And I think the only way for that to be better is for people to acknowledge it and confess it and realize it and understand that that's just where people are at. And for all the times that even I do it without realizing it, I'm sorry. And I kind of, like I said, it brought me to tears. I'm trying not to get emotional right now, but like thinking about this while watching this movie, and I was like, damn, like it really hits. And it's, that this movie's not an attack on white people. It's not a overt criticism or accusation. It's a mirror. It's a gentle reminder for people that are open to that. And I think it's very important. And I'm glad that I am able to rewatch this and really look at it through that lens and talk about it. And with that said, I will shut up now. But
no, a lot of what you said, I relate to on a different plane. It's mostly being a woman. It is difficult in some ways, because you feel like there's been so much progress made, but then you realize how little progress has really been made. And so when I'm listening to you talk about things and I'm internalizing what you're saying, you're 100% right. And I think this movie, even though it's focusing on black and white and privilege and the mirror, it also can translate to other groups of people that are disregarded or not thought of, in a similar way, is what I'm saying. As a woman, it's difficult. I mean, I've talked about this before. Being a woman who's a podcaster is a different thing. We are often criticized a lot more for what we do and how we sound and our accents and our appearance if we post videos than men are. And it's very thought-provoking to look at this movie like it's a mirror, because you can extend it, I guess, to other
like I said, with watching that, it's like, if I can be very honest with myself, unfortunately, you look at some of the things going on, you want to criticize them, like, oh, look how fucked up and terrible these people are. But it's like, to some degree, I'm, just as, culpable, of doing those same things, even if I don't even realize I'm doing it. And it's just part of, like I said, that's the core of white privilege, is being able to just live that kind of life and not even realizing you're doing it. And so opened my eyes to that for sure.
I think sometimes too, because there is so much shit in the world, and there are so many people that are just mean, vindictive, evil people. Some of us, I think, that have bigger hearts and are more open-minded and caring and supportive, try to overcompensate for the evilness that is out there.
I think Rod is the blueprint for white people. Like, I think that's why he's such an important character. Obviously, because he's super funny, and he saved Chris, but also because I think he was just concerned about his friend.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, I'm probably sure he held back some white people jokes in his back pocket. Like, he kind of put them in his back, because I felt like he was going to say more about Rose, but he just said, "You're a genius." Like, he was just, you know what? You're clearly, there's a reason you have a lot of victims.
Yeah.
Like, and he just moved on. Because at that point, it was about getting his friend. Like, I have to get him out of there. I don't have time to deal with these racist white people. And I think that's the path forward. And I don't mean to sound like corny or saccharine or, I don't know what other word, synonym. I'm trying to think of the other synonym, like schmaltzy or whatever. I don't mean to sound schmaltzy, but I think that was the role of Rod. It was like, hey, if you're someone that has some compassion, you can, take down racism in a small way. I mean, because Rod didn't, help Chris kill all the people, just that one family. So the other people at the auction are still alive, but still, you can put a dent. You can put a dent into it by just being compassionate and caring about people as people. So.
Right. Yeah. Like I said, again, I don't want to harp on, because it's like, look at me with my great ideas. That's not what it's about. But yeah, it's like, the only thing I can say is, like, it's just, unfortunately, it's like just the way that society is it's not necessarily that I can turn around and go, now that I've had this like realization, it's like, I can be an absolute better person, and there's absolutely no racism anymore because I've cracked the code. It's, there's, like I said, the only thing to do with that, and the only way to make it better, is just to acknowledge it exists and talk about it and push against it whenever it shows up.
Yeah. It's a work in progress. It's something that we need to be cognizant of and realize the way that we look at it might not be. We just need to be more conscientious about it.
Yeah. Like Rob.
And kind and empathetic and, we need to change what's ingrained and make us better people.
Because I've had too many, when I was younger, there were too many situations where it was like someone would notice my MP3 player and be like, "Oh my God, Jay-Z, oh yeah, I love that guy." And that's what the white people would say. Like, that would overcome. Like, "Oh man, I love his songs, man. He's so cool, man." It's like, okay, guys, like, you don't have to.
Yeah, I do. I think this is overcompensation, like overkill of trying to patronize or placate someone because you think that's what they need.
There was one person, it was a white lady. She was like, "I saw Black Panther like 4 times." I was like, you You could just say you like the movie.
Yeah.
You don't have to tell me the number of times.
Right.
How many ally points do I earn with that one? Can I is that enough to turn them in for a little finger trap or something?
It's not a contest.
Right.
And I feel like sometimes subconsciously we think it is.
Mm-hmm.
Like we have to cancel out someone else's. If we are extra good and we go further and bigger and beyond, that we're going to cancel someone else out. Like they're bad. We're going to cancel out their bad with our good. And that's not how it works.
Yeah. Because if you treat it like that and not just like other human beings, and I think you nailed it. It's the word to sum that up is it's patronizing.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's in its own way, it's a covert racism, and it's just as problematic, and we need to face things and do things differently.
Yeah.
I just realized Black Panther and Get Out came out the same year.
Oh my gosh, they were both nominated for an Oscar too.
Yeah, and I remember I saw Get Out after Black Panther. So I saw Black Panther first. And then, anytime I was like, out in a public space, and like I'm the type of person, like when I'm in a public space with a friend and we're talking about something, other people might join in because I'm just a really animated, friendly guy. So we're talking about Black Panther. I think it was at a mall or a courtyard in the college campus or something. And this random white lady's like, "Oh my gosh, I saw Black Panther like 4 times." Like, and I'm like, "Why did you have to emphasize the 4?" And then I saw Get Out, and the dad was like, "I would have voted for Obama a 3rd time." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is like real life again." Like real life is in the movie.
It's I'm gonna, after this conversation that we've had tonight, it's gonna make me think more before I say something, because I'm not gonna want to come off that way. But I think
I will say,
I think it is. I think Pake's right. It's ingrained in us to. Yeah. It just is. And
I'm a guy. I saw She-Hulk and I was like, I needed to rethink what I say to women. So, it happens in different situations and different, kind of like what you were saying, Daphne, like different demographic. With different demographics, it can be like now, like when I criticize a female podcaster or disagree with it, I think about it a little bit more because another podcaster told me the same thing you did, Daphne, about women being judged more harshly in that space.
It is. It's so, but it's hard. And you get sick of of being people being patronizing to you. It's
Run for Your Lives is the best podcast. It's my number one favorite podcast. Who's this Pake guy? Daphne's like way better than Pake.
No. No, we're a team. We live and die as a team with this podcast. That's one of the best things about it. Anyway, so my point was Bradley Whitford. I think we've covered it. Pake, what do you have?
Man, honestly, I think I've got other points, but after all of that I spilled, I think, like I said, I just want to step back. And I think I got what I needed to say. I would definitely, I will use that as just like the point that I want to make is give that, because I had that thought and I'm like, it's a great thought, but then with that, like I said, it's probably a good time to shut up and let it.
So Renaldy, what do you have?
Pake is kind of, I guess my third point segues into what Pake was saying in his last. Well, his first point, he brought up the sex slave thing that Rod brought up, and then the last point, it was emotional, for good reason. And so my third point is kind of, I guess, the culmination of all of that, because it's the deconstruction of the well-meaning white person. That is my third point. And like this movie kind of deconstructs that whole concept of like the white person that means well. And like Rose kind of fetishizing fetishizing Chris is like unsettling because he has these kind of self-esteem issues because of what happened to his mom, and like it's almost like there's a lack of like validation, and she's like filling that void.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like really unsettling because it's like that's your girlfriend who's like roughly the same age as you. That's not, and that's why he got hypnotized, because the mom kind of took advantage of that type of like that kind of hole like in his emotional core. And just the idea that there's a lot of like, I don't know, it reminded me of like Archer. You guys have seen that show?
No, I've never seen Archer. I've heard really good things about it.
But you know what it is.
It's like a superhero, right? Or an agent, a spy, yeah.
Spy, yeah. So his mom created the spy agency that he works for, and she's his boss. And she subtly influences everything in his... Well, one, she's subtly racist. That's number one. And so and two, she subtly influences everything in his life to the point where his girlfriend is black. Like he tries to find a black best friend. That's like a running gag, and he fails miserably. And she like she reads and writes erotic fiction, and it's always a black man.
This sounds so
like
that show. I don't think it's what I thought it was.
And she has this like love-hate relationship with his black on-again, off-again girlfriend. Like, and it's just like, and that's what I thought of like that whole time of like, because the girlfriend works for the agency too. So it's like that same dynamic of like, oh, I'm helping black people. I'm giving them jobs. I'm giving this agent an opportunity to excel and this and that. And even like Archer, the main character, is kind of being like Rose in a way with her. It's like, oh, I care about you. Like in a world where, black women don't get that type of effect. It's like, it's this weird, like basically what Pake was saying, but I guess I think the movie plays around with it in a sexual context, especially when Rose is like trying to seduce Rod. And Rod is like, what the heck is this? Went left. So that's basically my third point, just that whole dynamic.
Wow.
And the fact that there's like a wall of black men, like conquests, so it's almost like a reverse of like the male stereotype of like a notch in his belt. It's like the reverse of that.
Yeah. Well, all I have left is notes. So we've talked so much about all the deep stuff, and I really just have notes left.
Nice. Yeah. Like I still, like I said, have like 2 whole points that I didn't really touch, but like I felt like it's like at this point, do I need to rehash like, and here's what I think about? No, nobody cares. But I definitely, I mean, I have other notes and stuff that like, just to talk about, you talk about casting stuff. Daniel Kaluuya, incredible.
Oh,
like I had seen him in Black Mirror,
mm-hmm.
and that was probably about it at this point. If that had even, I think that was before this. And so I knew who he was, and I'm like, yeah, he's great. But then rewatching this again, because it's funny, because when I first saw him, I was like, oh, it's like a baby Daniel Kaluuya. Like it's not that long ago, but like, just he's grown so much as an actor, and I've seen him in so much things that like he feels so much younger in this movie. That like I was just like, man, he's done so many things, and then watching him, because I mean he's great. Whether talk about Black Panther, right? But then he's done so many other
Judas and the Black Messiah.
My God, what a movie! But yeah,
he was great. Nope.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, Nope.
But watching him again in this movie, it's the scene where him and Rose go for that walk, and he's finally just unloading everything that he's been feeling and all of this stuff, and he starts crying, and he's just like, and it's hard to watch because like she's manipulating him and using him. Like, all of this doesn't mean anything to her. But just in that scene, I'm like, my God, he's incredible. Like, what a performance. It's like, no wonder Jordan Peele brings him back in Nope, because he's so good.
He's so perfect
So
in that
good.
role. So perfect. It's yeah. I think maybe Jordan Peele, maybe he's going to go the route that we have with Mike Flanagan, where he has some actors or actresses that he brings back for different roles because they fit and he knows he can count on them to deliver.
Yeah.
Yep. I hope he keeps going with different films.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm trying to say, I'm just skipping over a lot of my stuff because I'm like, it's good. But let's see. So I guess really the last thing, because I mean, I can talk more about like, oh, here's all the terrible things that they did and how they hid it, but like we covered it enough. So really just like,
oh, you mean the family, the Armitage family? Oh, yeah.
But I guess what I do want to say, I guess, is just like, where was it? Because we didn't talk a whole lot about, his backstory, which you did mention a little bit, Renaldy, as far as like that was, because he was being manipulated in that way. They knew that like the hypnotism and stuff would work easily because he had a lot of trauma that they could really tap into and use. But this idea of like, what happened with his mom and how they could play off of that. Of course, then it kind of comes into his advantage a little bit, is like this kind of tick or thing that he has where when he's thinking about that, he picks at whatever his hands are on, giving him that stuffing to come loose from the chair, which was, helped him escape in the end.
Yes.
But that becomes kind of his saving grace and his downfall at the same time. It's when he's finally leaving, he's getting out, and he hits Georgina with the car. And he has to take that moment. He's telling himself, just run away. Like you left her there the first time. You can just leave her again. Don't do anything. But like, he can't allow himself to do that. And he goes back. Doing that, of course, is what results in him crashing the car and having this face off with Walter and Rose and all of that. But he still, to make sure things are right with himself, he has to go back for her. And so I wanted to bring up a little extra note. I have an alternate ending to this movie. I watched it on Amazon Prime, and they have the alternate ending with Jordan Peele giving commentary on it. And so I wanted to kind of just roughly talk about that, because it adds a lot to that. So the alternate ending is, instead of, Chris like strangling Rose, and then he sees that that's part of her plan too, so he lets go, and then Rod shows up. Instead, in the alternate ending, which was actually shot first, it was the original ending, and then Jordan Peele decided to change it. He kills Rose, strangles her right there in the street, and she dies. And then the car pulls up, and it's not Rod. It is an actual police car. Police officers come out, they arrest him, and he goes to prison. Because obviously, look at the optics of this. Mm-hmm. And it was kind of more of a commentary on social injustice. Here, it's like, it doesn't matter what the true story is. Black man, violent situation, lock him up, right? And
dead white family.
Yeah.
And so that was the original ending, is he goes to prison, and then you get like 6 months later, Rod is visiting him in prison, and Rod's saying, we're going to fight this. I'm going to get you out. We're going to keep going and keep going. We're going to try to, get you out of there because we know what happened. And there's this kind of speech from Chris where he just tells him, stop. We can't win. It's not even worth the effort anymore. Just let me. He's like, I'm at peace with what's happened. And he tells him, I beat it. And what Jordan Peele in the commentary says is like, yeah, he beat them, the Armitage family, and he escaped, and he was free from that. But more importantly, he was free from his demons, from his choices he made with his mother, and how going back for Georgina, whether it cost him his life in prison, was the right thing. He was able to free his soul from the torment that had been giving him his whole life, and that was what was important. And so Jordan Peele on the commentary said he wrote that ending first because he wanted to give the gut punch at the end that, racism is being talked about and it's being faced, but it still lies under the surface and is very alive. And so this ending is real, and it's too real, and it's kind of that gut punch. And then he said, after writing that and sitting with that for a little bit, he decided to kind of focus more on the positive ending and wanted to give us a hero instead, because he felt at the time that society was on an upswing and was becoming more aware of true racism and was doing a better job of battling it. And so almost in a way he wanted to reward that by giving them a happy ending and a hero to look at instead of this bleak ending. I can't speak necessarily for the hope that Jordan Peele put in society. I want to say that, like, yeah, he's right in a way that, like, I think we are doing better than we always. It's a back and forth, always is with society. As we step forward, we step back, we step forward. So I want to have the hope in society that Jordan Peele does in that commentary. But
me too.
But yeah, but I thought that was interesting.
Renaldy, what ending do you think? Do you think he should have changed it? Or do you think he should have done the original ending, even though it seemed bleaker?
I'm happy that he changed the ending, because I think the ending, like I said, I think on the surface it can seem like kind of sugar coated and schmaltzy or whatever, but I think it's just a progression of just Rod, because from the beginning he was like very concerned about Chris. So I think because it was this progression, it's not like it's like he just showed up out of nowhere. Like, he's been constantly checking up on Chris. And so I think that made the ending that we got, it made it ring true to the story. Even though the original ending rings true to a lot of Black people that get caught up in injustice, I think for this movie and this story, I think the new ending with Rod saving Chris it fit the movie.
Yeah.
And also it also creates a window of, hey, this might be a path forward, is just showing compassion on other people. The way Rod did. So, but I don't blame people, because I remember one friend of mine that was like upset that the ending was changed, and he was like the only one in our friend group that was like upset about everyone else was like me, kind of like grateful, like it was Rod saving Chris. But this one friend was saying, we don't want to give this false impression of like kumbaya impression that things are going to get better. That's what he was saying. And I can understand why people feel that way if they were unhappy that they didn't get the original ending.
Looking at Rose and realizing when she was picking her targets, he had so much trauma, and I'm sure that learning that as she was getting to know him, realizing, okay, this is my next target, but he's got issues. There's a way for him. Sorry, one of the cats is scratching. Because he had the background that he had and the trauma as a child, it was easier for her to manipulate him. And I think one of the reasons why he went back, he couldn't just leave. He had to go back for Georgina. He knew the whole story, so he knew that somewhere trapped inside her was the original person. And he couldn't leave her there. Like, he didn't want to, I don't think he wanted to do that. And we also got two very different responses to the Flash. Because when he flashed Andre was just kind of, oh my, just like, get out, get out, get out. But when he used the phone camera on Walter very calmly just looked at Rose and said, let me do it. Like, he had been preparing for this. Like, he was prepared to just pretend that he was still the person that she thought he was. That he was still her grandfather in control of that body. And I thought that was kind of interesting. The differences. I think it may have to do with how long they had been suppressed. Can you imagine being a passenger in your own head? Like in a sunken place while someone else takes over? That is terrifying.
that's the horror, like, of no control.
Yeah. Just
So even though there's some funny parts in this movie, there's still horror in this.
yeah,
Cause yeah.
man.
And you can't die because you're metaphorically dead, but you're still inside the person.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so it's oof.
Yeah, it's rough. Does anyone do you have some more?
I have like a couple.
Okay.
Because most of the notes we just covered while we were having a discussion about the movie. So the first thing I had was Chris is kind of like a satire about everyman characters in horror movies. It's always like a character that you don't know too much about, and he's kind of almost like a blank slate. And that's why he was like chosen specifically. So it's almost like he's kind of Jordan Peele's like jabbing at the idea that like every time there's a horror movie, it's like this blank slate character. And like these characters, it's almost like these characters are how do I phrase this? It's like these characters are not, I think he just kind of played into like how these characters are just not aware by using the social awkwardness of like, oh, I have to go to this random place in the middle of nowhere to meet my girlfriend's parents. He kind of like played into that, like, because like these characters, the one distinguishing trait about them is that they have this traumatic background, or this like they're a struggling artist. Like I'm thinking about The Shining, and then they're not aware. Like that's basically it. But I like the fact that by the end of the movie we get a little bit more about Chris. And then another thing I had was the sunken place being this meme that was like used a lot, like when this movie came out, and just kind of referring to like, don't allow some white people in denial about racism to gaslight you into thinking it's not there. Cause like, that's the sunken place. Like, speak up, speak out. Like, cause in the scene, Chris is like trying to vocalize and he can't. So I like that fact that it was a meme. And then my final note is the ending is like a subversion of The Final Girl. And this is like the note that I really like a lot, because Chris would have been dead if Rod didn't come in and save him. And also if Walter didn't, the real black man that was, forced to be a passenger, if he didn't hold it together, because if he gave himself away, he would have been killed too.
Yeah.
So like, and I feel like he was kind of poking at the final, because the final girl, it's like they're literally by themselves trying to, and then they win. But then this one, it's like Chris needed help to win. So it's like Jordan Peele flipped it on its head. And I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. I didn't think about that, but I like that.
Yeah. So, I guess Little Rel Howery, who of course played the amazing Rod, said that when he goes through airports now, the TSA agents recognize him from this movie.
Solidarity, our TSA brother. Solidarity.
And he also did a lot of the dialogue was his, like he ad-libbed a lot of it.
He's hilarious.
He's great. He is great.
I saw some outtakes, and one of them is like, why white women, man? Like, why? There's Asian women, there's black women, there's... and then Daniel Kaluuya was like trying really hard not to laugh and break character.
That's great.
So I guess it was like material they just decided not to use.
Yeah. Well, that's probably, I could imagine, I mean, I don't know a lot about like Rel, but I could imagine working with him on like something like this, and a lot of that would be like, you do it. You improvise, you play with it, have fun, because like there's gonna be some gold in there, and then we'll shape it. We'll shape it into what works. But you just
in
run
editing,
with it.
yes,
like
the power of editing to make it all work.
And then you have bonus scenes that people can enjoy that didn't make the final cut.
Yeah, there were. I also read an article where Jordan Peele was talking about like some of the movies that influenced this one, like The Stepford Wives, which we're gonna cover it, and we're gonna cover the original because I know Pake hasn't seen it.
No,
it's so good. So
it's good.
Yeah. So Stepford Wives, Night of the Living Dead, because that was a movie ahead of its time because it actually had a black hero leading man, which was not, wasn't common.
It came out in the
60s.
It came out in the 60s, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a huge thing. And then also Halloween, because Halloween had this neighborhood that was, mostly white, white people. So those are just a couple of the movies that influenced it. And I think you can see the Stepford Wives, like, right away. I got that vibe from this movie. And I can't say anymore because it would give something away. And I can't wait to cover it with Pake because it's going to be interesting. I think we'll do a double dip of the original and the remake, even though the remake has a completely different feel. So, I think.
Oh, I like double dips.
Yeah, the double dips are fun.
Yeah. We haven't done one yet this season, so. Before the season's over, we will.
All right. So, yeah, I think tapped out on everything I need to say on mine. You got
I think we covered it.
We're all good?
Peg is just going to hug every black person he sees on the street. I'm joking.
Again.
I'm joking.
I don't want to lean into it too hard, right? Oh, God, how can I be right? Oh, no. No.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it's just like this kind of understanding, like it doesn't, even with all that, it doesn't matter, because, you can always do better, but that's just kind of how things are. I guess as long as you're always conscientious of it and acknowledge it and put yourself in check when you need to, then that's the best you can do. Like,
I think what you just said, we can always do better. And I think if you think about that, I can do better. I did okay, but I can do better.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I haven't known you as long as Daphne, but I agree.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Well, man, yeah. So if I think we've got it. Renaldy, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, we really appreciate it.
It was great to have you here, just to have the conversation. Definitely come back anytime you want to, and we can talk about a movie that it doesn't hit us so hard sometimes. Maybe we just talk about your favorite Cheese Fest movie and just completely turn your brain off and talk about it. Yeah, anything you want. Definitely. Well, again, so thanks for coming on. And before we let you go and wrap this up, it's been a blast having you, but I know everybody who's listening to this needs more Renaldy in their life. So in any form or fashion. So where can people find you? What are you up to? What are things you got going on?
Well, I am working on starting my own podcast. I was originally on a podcast called Marvelous Friends with 3 of my friends, and we discussed Marvel movies. We discussed movie fan culture, and even just discussed science fiction superhero movies in general. But we're on a hiatus, so I've decided to kind of start my own podcast. It's still under the works, but in the meantime, I have a blog that has material that will eventually be in this podcast, and it's called Storytelling from All Angles, and it's just kind of my take on just different fan kind of cultures or fan experiences, whether they're Star Wars fandom, Marvel fandom, any kind of nerdy fandom, and Walking Dead fandom.
I've got one for you, Renaldy. We'll talk offline.
Okay. But yeah, it's a bunch of different kind of like humor filled kind of essays or discussions about different, topics or in different fandoms. And you can find it on the address is storytelling from all angles .substack.com. So it's on Substack.
Awesome. And we'll make sure to
we'll put that in the show notes.
And stuff. Yeah. Link that out to people to find it. Yeah, definitely check that out because Renaldy, from the few years that I've known you, you can put up some essays and have some really great thoughts. Like you have lots of thoughts about pop culture and things that man, it's pretty awesome. Like honestly, it's like, man, who even thinks about this? Renaldy does.
Renaldy thinks about it. He's gonna have something to say.
I'm glad I have a space where I can put it and people can enjoy it if that's what they're into.
Yeah.
Awesome. So check him out over there. Again, telling stories from all angles.substack.com. I remembered. Get that. Yeah, check that out. And then if you get that podcast, the podcast form of that going, we'll definitely keep in touch with that, and we'll make sure to plug everything you're working on because
thank you.
You work hard and you do great stuff.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Preach.
I'm sure that people that listen to our show have thoughts on this one. I'm wondering what people thought of this one. And then the feedback phone starts ringing, but it's not ringing.
So we'll edit around that. But yeah, so it's we covered it. It was a good time. And there we go.
All right, we
have
a little bit of feedback.
It's crazy. It's almost as if you speak it into existence.
One more time, thank Renaldy for being on here. He had to
bounce on out of here. We usually don't have guests sticking around for the feedback stuff. They get sucked into the void of podcast guest of the guests of podcast past. But hopefully we pull them back out and they come back out at some point.
Yeah, we definitely have to have Renaldy back. I think it's probably going to be one of my favorite episodes because of the conversation we had while talking about this one.
Yeah, it was great. So again, make sure people to go check out his blog and stuff like that and give Renaldy some love. We'll hope to have him back again soon. But we did hear from a couple of different people, so I'll go ahead and get to this first one. Of course, it is Catherine, always coming through. Says, I enjoy Get Out with every rewatch. I remember having a hard time getting invested during my first viewing, thinking it was some sort of cannibalism or slavery twist, but I never guessed supernatural body possession or the sunken place. I thought Rose was awkward and naive, but I didn't see her involvement coming either. Now, I love picking up on all the early subtle connections and details, which makes Get Out so much more terrifying. As much as I enjoy the deeper concepts, twists, and scares, my favorite parts revolve around the best TSA airport security cop ever, Rod Williams. Knowing some of Peele's other endings could be quite dark, I love that Rod was there at the end to help us smile.
Oh, yes. So much fun. He saw all the red flags. He really did. You should always listen to Rod.
Yes.
So Becky says, it took me a while to be able to watch it. It was really good with a lot of great suspense. When that tear rolled down his cheek once he realized what was happening, got me.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's hard because you see it unfolding in his head as this is happening to him.
Right.
And
oh no, get out. Get out.
Yeah.
All right. And then lastly, we have one from Melissa who says, an incredible movie that was very difficult to watch.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Agreed.
It can be. Yeah. Especially if you've listened to this episode, there's some moments that I'm like, oh shit. But yeah, it's a great one. Jordan Peele is the master.
He's a treasure. He really is. I like that Jordan Peele is showing us his creepy side, that he has these cool concepts. We need more of this in horror. We need fresh ideas or perspectives to be able to, get us excited about horror again, because I feel like a lot of times things get, just regurgitated or reimagined in a way that's just not different anymore. So it's cool to have some fresh concepts and perspectives. But if you would like to submit your feedback like Catherine, Becky, or Melissa, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Run for Your Lives Podcast. You can send us an email at runforyourlivespodcast@gmail.com. So if you're enjoying the show, tell your friends. We are available on all the podcast players, including Apple, Spotify, YouTube, you name it. If I found a way to get us on there, we're on there.
Yes.
You can go to runforyourlivespodcast.com for all the links that you're ever going to need. And while you're at it, why don't you drop us a review on Apple Podcasts, as that's the best way to share the love and get us out there even more. We really appreciate it.
Yes, we do. Absolutely. Really do. And speaking of sharing the love, got to give some shout outs to things going on in the podcast universe around us. Of course, right here on Podcasticon's network, lots of great stuff to check out as The Walking Dead, The Ones Who Live, is running, and it's been so great so far. So, of course, you can check out the coverage this week, and I think the feedback coverage, if it's not up now, then it should be soon, but the episode coverage for sure of episode 3, titled Bye, Jason and Lucy just killing it every time. It's been so great to listen to those and watch the episodes. It's been great.
Yeah, and they also have the after show that is kind of like a quick little discussion on things that happen. It's kind of like a live reaction type thing. And I'm going to be on it this weekend.
Yeah.
So I'm excited.
That'll be great. And then some more rewatch stuff going on in Podcastica that you have been going on that so great as well. On the Revisited podcast with Ben and Kristen going through Ted Lasso. They are in season 2 with episode 11, Midnight Train to Royston, this week. So you can go hit up that episode, go check that out. And of course, over on Still Slaying, the Buffy fan cast, Kara and Penny, working their way through season 3 this week with episode 12, Helpless. So you can check that out as well. So Buffy fans and Ted Lasso fans, rejoice. There's rewatch podcasts on Podcastica for you to go check out. And then lastly, outside of Podcastica, but always in our hearts, our good friends over at TV Podcast Industries. We got to give them some love for doing all the great work that they do with so many shows. Right now covering the Disney Plus series, the Star Wars animated show Bad Batch, the final season. Been covering that as episodes are releasing. And then they are also working on the FX show Shogun, which I've talked about, like, oh, I've heard good things. So between now and now that the Oscars are over and I've had some more time to like catch up on things, I binged the shit out of it. So like, yeah, I'm caught up. I'm caught up on Shogun. Holy crap, what a show. Watch it. Everybody go watch it. Listen to Derek and John talk about it. Just do, it's so good. So freaking good. But yeah, so that's all the things going on with our friends right now. But as always, you can come right back here next week to hear more me and Daphne on Run for Your Lives. What are we doing next week, Daphne?
Well, it's been a while since we've done one of these, but next week we're going to present to you our second Look Ahead special, where we talk about movies we want to cover on this podcast in the future.
Yeah, so we did that a while back, like season 2 or 3, and it was fun. We ended up covering a lot of those movies.
Them, yeah.
And so we're kind of doing it again. It's a smaller list. We kind of picked movies that we've never even talked about on this one before, that we've kind of found, hiding under rocks somewhere in our brains. We were able to pull those out and find them. So hopefully we'll get to covering a lot of them. And then also for feedback, a little early feedback stuff for you guys. We'd like to hear what your picks are. What are some movies we haven't covered that you would like to hear from us covered? That feedback might not make it into next week's episode because there's just a whole thing with traveling and stuff. We're recording weird times. But then whatever episode we release in 2 weeks, we will get to your feedback for sure. So still go ahead and send us in and give us your thoughts, what you want us to cover.
Absolutely. I'm interested. We already have quite a bit of feedback, but I'd love more because it does help us figure out what we're going to do. And then sometimes we'll go back and forth on different movies, and then there'll be a week where we're like, what should we cover? These lists really help.
Yeah, absolutely.
With that, we have reached the end of our episode. Thanks for listening. I'm Daphne.
And I'm Pake.
And if you have to run, you better run for your lives.
Bye-bye.